Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that you're joining us. I am with a fantastic guest today for a mutual interview. Her name is Dr. Jane Guyn, and she's a sex coach, and she's got answers that we need. And today's topic is, why do affairs in marriage occur, and how can you stop the pattern? The influence that one's past childhood has on your happiness and success in love. So I've got incredible questions for Jane. I can't wait to hear what she has to say. You're going to learn so much from her. And Jane, welcome. Thank you for spending the time with me today.
I'm so glad to be here with you and just so excited to dig into this really incredible topic.
Thanks, Jane. Let me tell you, everyone, a little bit about her background. Jane Guyn is a doctor of human sexuality, professional sex coach, core energy coach, and registered nurse. She's the author of the Amazon #1 bestseller, Too Busy to Get Busy. Dr. Jane helps couples have the sex life they've secretly desired all their lives by removing one or more of the 7 barriers to great sex, even if it's been a rocky road. As someone who's been married for over 30 years, Dr. Jane understands the challenges, and she has 6 kids. So obviously she's not too busy to get busy.
Oh, that's so fun.
And just for the listeners too, just so you know, I want to give your website real quick. It is janeguyn.com, which is spelled JaneGuyn.com, and you can reach her at jane@janeguyn.com.
Fantastic. And for my listeners, I'd like to introduce you to my wonderful friend, the dynamic and heart-centered Riana Milne. Riana Milne is a certified global life dating and relationship coach, a #1 best-selling author, a life and dating coach for the new docu-series Radical Dating: Finding Lasting Love Over 40. She's host of her former TV show, Lessons in Life and Love. She's an educational speaker, a licensed mental health counselor, and certified trauma and addictions professional for over 18 years in Delray Beach, Florida. She specializes in those who've had past childhood, dating, or relationship trauma and offers one-on-one VIP coaching and online virtual coaching programs for both singles and couples at her www.lifeandlovetrainingacademy.com. Riana's free app, My Relationship Coach, offers many videos and articles, and her 5-star rated books, Love Beyond Your Dreams, Break Free of Toxic Relationships to Have the Love You Deserve, and Live Beyond Your Dreams, From Fear and Doubt to Personal Power, Purpose, and Success. She addresses life's transitions, personal transformation, and relationship with yourself and others. Riana's Facebook fan page is Coach Riana Milne, and her website is rianamilne.com. That's spelled RianaMilne.com. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you, Riana.
Thank you, Jane. And I wanted to tell our mutual listeners that Jane and I became friends through a group that we are learning to get our message out there, because our messages are so important to helping heal the world, one person or one couple at a time. So when I met Jane, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to bring your message to my listeners. Please do a podcast with me. So I've been after her, and I finally have her today. And I have a series of questions I'm going to answer. So let's take it away. Jane, tell us, how does past history influence intimacy in a long-term relationship?
Well, I am so glad you asked me that, Riana, because, we all have that sense that our past lives influence us today. I mean, it's common knowledge. It's part of what we think about when we find somebody to marry, for example. But when I work with my women or with couples, I help them look back at the past. Now, I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, so I don't really spend a tremendous amount of time in the past, but we do look at the past. And we think about what has happened and how are those traumatic events from the past, and I know you're going to discuss this at in depth when, later in our conversation, but we look at how those issues influence what we're doing today in our relationship and how we are reacting together in a sexual way, in fact, because remember, I'm a sex coach. So I notice that with my clients, a lot of times something will feel really uncomfortable, maybe because it reminds him or her of something that's happened in the past. Could be something very small, something really easy to resolve, or it could be something very traumatic that would require a different type of resolution.
Absolutely. Are most married couples sexually compatible? What happens that these marriages just fall apart? They're so passionate in the beginning and so romantic. What happens over time?
Yeah, the question of sexual compatibility is really an interesting one to me as a sexologist, because, I have my PhD in human sexuality, and I've studied about sex in many of the sexiest places in the world, including Amsterdam, Las Vegas, San Francisco.
How fun. What an excuse to go to these great places. I have to study the sex pattern.
You're right. So, and this question of sexual compatibility often arises. And I tell my clients that compatibility is actually something that can be, kind of created or co-created for two people, because one of the problems with incompatibility, in my view, is that it's a lack of communication that's often happening there. It's actually not always real compatibility that people reference when they say, oh, we're incompatible. Oftentimes it's the fact that she hasn't told him that she's not getting physical satisfaction out of their lovemaking, and so she doesn't seem very interested, and so he thinks she is actually not very sexual, when in truth there's some pieces there that they're not sharing. And since they're not sharing those pieces of information together, they are technically incompatible in that time. And yes, that's true for them, that they're incompatible, but really where there's a bridge that can be built between the two people using what I call the bedroom method, something I've created that helps two people to create alignment together and build their compatibility. Now, it's true that sometimes people, even with a lot of communication and tons of increased skills and a conceptual framework for discussing sex, they still find that, we're not really, when we tell each other what we really want, it's just not compatible. And I do see that occasionally, but more often it's a lack of communication that causes this perceived incompatibility and then leads to a decrease in passion and connection and subsequent deterioration of the relationship in the bedroom and beyond.
That totally makes sense. It sounds like, and a lot of people that I work with from trauma, childhood dating or relationship trauma, they have a lot of negative false assumptions. They assume something to be true and they just go with it without really talking about it. So it sounds like, or the shyness factor, or I don't want to hurt his or her feelings, so I'm not going to tell them he's not really turning me on, or, I think she's cold because I still love her, but she's not responding. So that makes so much sense that the communication has broken down, or the assumptions are going on that may not even be true.
Totally. Yep, that's right. Because what happens is it's such a personal and kind of tough to talk about subject, particularly if time has passed. So I find in long-term relationships where that initial passion, and you mentioned that, Riana, the initial passion gets us past a lot of the bumps, really, in many relationships. Like, okay, we really love each other. This is fantastic. You're brand new to me. I have new relationship energy, or NRE going on, and there's nothing you can do wrong right now in a relationship. Is that we are so excited and aroused by each other because we're new to each other. We have new relationship energy, and it's so much easier to be together at that time because there's so much erotic tension and chemistry for most of us. But when that settles down and we aren't quite as turned on by each other, some of those pieces come into play. And then we want to say something, but we don't want to make our partner feel bad. We don't know how to talk about it. And you're totally right that communication is an issue there.
And how to get them past that?
Yeah, so, it's amazing, but we can use the same skills and abilities that we use in the rest of our lives to modify many pieces of our sexual relationship. We can, I guess, in a way, analyze what's been going on with each other, with ourselves. So we start from within, and I can say to my partner, these are the things that I find erotic, and I can share them with him in a way so that he's cued into that type of thing in our relationship going forward. Not that we want to talk about it in an analytical way when we're, having a special erotic or romantic evening. These are conversations we have at coffee maybe, or another time in our relationship, or when people work with me during a VIP day, we would discuss this, or in my coaching programs, which are group programs for women, where they learn how to have these conversations. Great. And then we use the same skills of being able to say, I love you, and I am not having orgasm with you. I actually do have orgasm. I have it during my self-pleasuring time, but I've actually been faking it because I didn't want you to feel bad. So, I pretended a little bit. I mean, it felt good, but it wasn't an orgasm. And actually, I want to start having orgasms with you because I feel like that's something that we could achieve together. It's not the most important thing, but I'd like to share that I want to open up our relationship together with each other around that. And I'd like to show you how that could happen.
And Jane, do you work with the man or the second partner in this relationship?
Yes, I do. When we're in the VIP day container, and just to clarify, because people ask me this all the time, I find this very cute because people have a great imagination, and often people will say and ask me if I have sex with my clients, or if I'm in the room. If I'm in the room with them when they have sex, it's like, no, you guys. You have more of an imagination than I do. So yes, I work with both members of the couple, and I work with same-sex couples as well. But so I work with both people in that VIP day container, and it's not just one day. We start in a few weeks beforehand, and they do some deep thinking and some communicating before they even get to my office here in Bend, Oregon, or we sometimes do it virtually. We don't want to travel. And then there's some work that they do afterwards to make sure that everything they've learned, they can take into their lives in a way that really changes their relationship.
Great. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Does the busyness of real life affect their sexual intimacy?
Yeah, that's one of the things that comes up so often is,
and what do you suggest?
Well, it's the truth of it is, Riana, that it's not really the busyness that is the problem. That's what we say to each other and to ourselves. Oh, we're so busy. We're so busy. We don't have time. I'm too tired. And people are tired. I get that. But the busyness is really it's just really, and kind of sorry to say this because I've been there too, but it's an excuse really. It's an excuse because it doesn't take that long to make love. For most couples, we're really talking about under 10 minutes. Not to say that that's the best way to have sex, but that's the truth.
Well, I'm going to ask the question, is it better to have quantity or quality? I've always felt quality and really carving out the time or your date and spending an hour or so together may be more beneficial than these 10-minute times.
Well, it's a good question, and it's really important to ask what, if the 10 minutes of actual sex, intercourse, if it's a male-female couple that's having intercourse, that's probably not the whole episode or session. There's usually more around that of being together and, talking and, cuddling or what, we could, depending on who it is, there's a lot of erotic play that happens that brings two people together that has a lot to do with what you're discussing, which means, making an episode that is a beautiful container of erotic and loving passion that is has more resonance in it and more satisfaction. But that's that's fantastic. I really think that's important. Quickie sex, while fantastic in some cases,
that was the term we used.
Only sex. Okay, if that's it, if you never have a session that has more meaning or more pleasure or more expansion, then it's like eating fast food all the time. Going to grabbing a quick bite in your kitchen on an occasional basis or an occasional drive-through is not going to kill you. But if you do it every single day, of course. But you still maybe want to stay connected to your partner in a way that's faster. That's okay. There's no shame in that. But I think that your question more is, what about the quality? And I completely agree that the quality is important. And that's everything I teach, is to help people understand their own authentic voice so that there is a quality sexual experience together.
I think when there's more of those qualities, the quickies are even more about passion sex. And I want you right kind of sex,
Right.
Not just do this and get it over sex. We don't want that.
That's right.
Which happens in a lot of marriages.
Yes. When you understand each other passionately, you can have super hot quickies.
Yes.
That actually are, like that's the kind of thing you'll be humming about, while you listen to NPR, on the way to your next appointment,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do affairs happen in the marriages?
Well, so one of the things that happens in marriages, and this is, it's so common, and for many of us, we, think that we are completely alone when our partner has a connection, a sexual erotic connection outside the relationship. But they're very, very common, and it doesn't have to be a naked erotic connection. It can just be, what we call an emotional affair, which might just be somebody getting, like I call it leaking erotic energy. Where they're trying out their erotic energy outside of their primary relationship in a secretive way. And that can be as painful to the partner as a physical affair without any emotional connection, right?
Yep.
So these things happen so often, but it's part of the human experience, in my view, to have, to make mistakes, that happens. We make mistakes. And I work with women and men who are rebuilding their relationship, their sexual relationship, after a disastrous affair. And I help them reconnect, just really change the way that they were interacting before they ended up in the affair situation.
Yes, there's always a period of time before the affair that causes the affair.
That's usually true. There's something in there that is happening. And I'm not saying that if you're not having great sex at home, one or both of you is going to go outside for an affair. That's not, first of all, not everybody does. And secondly, just because your partner had an affair or you had an affair doesn't mean you weren't having a good sex life. So, those two things don't always go together, but they often do.
What are the percentages, Jane, of is there any research on that, the affairs that occur even when there's a great marriage and great sex life versus?
I would say it's very, I don't know any specific studies about that, but just my gut and having been in the field and, having oodles of friends who are sexologists, I would say that it's uncommon to have a smoking hot sex life and have a physical affair happening at the same time, but it's certainly not impossible.
I found working with couples that if that's a situation, let's say it's a male-female couple, that one having the extracurricular sex may be on the verge of sex addiction, going back towards childhood trauma. Like they're very happy and they say, I love my sex life, I love my wife, she's great, or my partner, everything's going well here, but they're still compelled to have more.
Yeah.
And that's where, they usually are using sex to build their ego for something else that's lacking.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes that's happening, even in the more typical affair. There's oftentimes, I mean, I'm not saying that that person has a compulsive sexual behavior, but oftentimes the affair is filling in for something that's lacking
I
internally, and
agree.
that's always what we're doing is we're seeking, and we're
Hmm.
seeking something from another. We
Yeah.
don't know how to get it in our primary relationship, so we're seeking it elsewhere.
Yeah. So couples that have been through this, you feel they actually can improve their intimate relationship and stay together. It's not a deal breaker, even if someone says, if my partner cheats, that's it, I'm done. And that
Mhm.
person who's so rigid in that moral value, and it's a value that's, often respected in our culture, can they get beyond the affair?
In my view, they can, and in my experience, that they often do.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's challenging, and it requires some very um, tough moments and some wisdom and some guidance, because many things that you might want to ask your partner about the affair, they'll haunt you
Hmm.
later.
Yeah, they want all
And
the details, which is very dangerous to
right,
go
but
into.
you might have your partner may have had some experiences in their affair that they'd like to add into your relationship. So it's very tricky to figure
Hmm.
out a way to create really radical honesty as a couple, really heartfelt, heart-centered honesty that
Hmm.
still allows forward progression of the relationship when there's a vision for what you want together and you want to build that together and you're committed to doing that. I feel very confident that couples can do that.
And if you find you have a chronic cheater on your hands, can you stop that pattern?
I don't believe once a cheater, always a cheater. That is not my view. But
Okay.
I think that if you have a relationship with somebody where they have recurrent affairs and it's outside of your relationship and it's secretive and it's not within your values that you can stay with that person, your partner would need to be committed to a change in his or her life
Yes.
that you have, that would be akin to making a big lifestyle change in another part of life. And I do think that that's possible for people to make lifestyle changes, but it comes from deep within the
This is
other.
a lot of work I do with those with
Yeah,
childhood trauma that have addiction. So it's addiction
right,
to anything, and cheating chronically is a sexual addiction.
right. So
So
let's talk about that.
okay, but I want to ask you one last question. I know you
Okay.
have some gifts for our listeners, so I definitely wanted you to go into what that was.
Yes. Well, offering today to our listeners an experience with me, time with me on a call where we could talk about what's going on in your life. And you can reach out to me at the email, or if you go to my website, janegwyn.com, there's a talk with me button. You can push that, get right into my calendar. I would be honored to spend time with you talking about these specific issues and at no cost to you. So that is my gift to you. And I'm also offering you a downloadable version of my book, Too Busy to Get Busy. It's a Amazon #1 bestseller. You can also get that on my website by going to my website, scrolling down, and just asking for your free book. So you'll get a downloadable
Perfect.
version. Yep,
Those are
that's my
great
pleasure.
gifts, everyone. Please take advantage of that. If you're struggling in your intimacy issues, whether you're single or a couple, straight or LGBT, Dr. Jane is the best. And she's real easy to talk to. She's got a real big, loving heart.
Mhm.
And I would definitely take advantage of those fabulous offers. Thank you, Jane.
My pleasure. So, Riana, I would love to hear about your work, and I know my audience would love that as well. Can
Sure.
you tell me about your research that shows that 9 out of 10 people are impacted by childhood trauma in life and love?
Yeah, it's been amazing, my journey. I really developed from a marriage situation that I went through, and I'm there, why am I attracted to someone that had a secret life? On our surface, that we were like so in love and passionate, great sex life, everything was phenomenal. We were called the it couple, everyone wanted to be us. And then he had this whole secret life of sex and porn addiction, which I had him lose everything. He was a principal at a school. It was found on his computer, and huge scandal. It was horrible. So from that, I'm like, how did this happen? I need the answers. What did he have? And he was devastated and swearing he loved me, and I couldn't see it. So that's where my research began. And it was brand new cutting research because it's nothing I had learned in my triple master's in applied clinical and counseling psychology or in my other licensures. Nowhere did I get this information. So I started my own journey, and I read probably over 250 books, and much of that material is put into my #1 bestseller, Love Beyond Your Dreams. And then after that book came out, even more research came out. And recently, in 2014, the Kaiser Permanente group out of San Diego came out identifying close to 20 childhood traumas. They call them ACEs, adverse childhood events, that occur in people's lives. So when I speak on a podcast, I usually go into the top 10 most common ones. So I would advise our listeners to get a piece of paper, draw 3 columns. In the first column, put me. Second column, put partner, whether current or past partner that you had some toxic, cheap drama going on. And the third column, put parents. And I'm going to give you a keyword to the top 10 traumas. And then just go across your column and see if your parents had it, your past partner, or you have it. And the starting of healing from childhood trauma begins with acknowledgement, because we can't change what we don't acknowledge or understand. So it's really important that we understand what childhood traumas we did come across. Like this research group found 89.8% of people have experienced at least one or a few of these. So when we're adults and we're looking back, it's like, yeah, there were some weird things that happened as I was growing up, but I don't call it trauma. But they identified them as traumas because what happens later, which I will go into, definitely goes back to what occurred as children. So here's the top 10 traumas. #1, again, remember you're a small, innocent child. You only know what's presented to you. So the first one is addiction. So if your parents had any type of addiction, most people think addiction is drugs and alcohol, but there's also sex, porn, cheating, hoarding, spending, eating, gambling, gaming, TV watching. Now that's just a few addictions right off the bat. Second is verbal abuse. So whether you witnessed your parents fighting, screaming, yelling verbally, or you were a recipient of, and that could have been being yelled or screamed at, being put down, never given compliments or recognized for what good you did do, leaving you not feeling good enough, or being stonewalled, giving the silent treatment as a punishment. So maybe mom or dad didn't talk to you for a couple of hours or a few days because they're mad at you. So that's all under verbal abuse. Third one is emotional abuse or neglect. Now, most of us know patterns of emotional abuse or neglect, but actually this research also came up with, which kind of I fell into and I felt all this guilt, single moms, for example, that have to go out and work 5 jobs. At one time in my life, I had 5 jobs to give my children the lifestyle I wanted them to have. And, my kids had to come home from school, open up the door, get in by themselves, do their homework, get their snack, and then I'd come home after work. So these are called latchkey kids. So even though we didn't intentionally mean to emotionally upset them, there's a sense of fear that children have when they have to do that, anxiety. So that's actually considered one of the emotional traumas or neglect. Next one is physical abuse, like severe beatings, rape or molestation. So of course, rape and molestation is, we rate them from 1 to 10, the severity. That's always a number 10. And if it's critical and damaging at any age, but up to the age of 25, trauma stays in the brain and body even more so because your brain is still developing. So whether that occurred inside or outside of the home, that's always a big one. Next one is abandonment issues, fault or no fault. So in no fault abandonment, 3 examples would be if a parent died early, certainly not their fault, but it occurred. Your parent has to go off and fight at war, or your parent travels a lot to support the family. That's the way the family survives. I fell into that category because my dad was FBI, CIA. We didn't know that. My mom didn't even know that. So I remember as a little girl asking, when's daddy coming home? And she'd go, well, I don't know. And I'm thinking, why would my mom not know? And why do we not know where my dad is? So that's a no-fault abandonment because he couldn't tell the family at that time. Okay, then a fault abandonment is if there's a divorce and let's say the father goes off, lives somewhere else and promises the kids to see them every other weekend and he doesn't show up or breaks the promises or is late. That's a fault abandonment. Next one is if you were adopted, part of the foster care system, or had to go live with other adults or family friends because your parents couldn't take care of you for some reason. Next one, number 7, is a big one. This is personal trauma. And the mainstay of this is being bullied or feeling not good enough, not fitting in school, not being picked for the sport teams. Overweight children go through this. Real skinny children who are awkward go through this. I had a beautiful African-American girl in my office, and she goes, no, my family life was great. As I'm going through the first ones, I hit that one. She goes, oh my God, that's it, Riana, because I was the only Black girl in an all-white school. I was never accepted. I was constantly bullied. I was put down, teased. It was a horrible experience for me. And she was a girl that had a lot of jealousy in her love relationship, and that stems back to her not feeling good enough. So that was the big piece for her. Next one is sibling trauma. The most common is when you perceive your sibling to be the golden child, that mom or dad favored them more. That could have been because they were more athletic. You perceive them to be better looking, more intelligent, something more, that they got more attention from mom or dad and you felt less than. You could never measure up. In your mind, you couldn't compete. Another sibling trauma is if they were born or developed a medical complication and they got more attention than you did. Number 9 is family trauma, and I stole from the other list community trauma and put that in there. Why? Because community trauma has so increased in our country, I'm thinking since August, with all the hurricanes, loss of home by flood, fire, the mortgage crisis in 2018, the California fires right now. There's so many people going through massive community trauma. Of course, this is very hard on the adults, but can you imagine the little people, the children with, their little minds aren't developed to absorb such trauma in their lives. So this is often, considered PTSD. And this is definitely community trauma is a big one. The mass shootings, I was out in Las Vegas talking on that topic and just chatting with the people of Vegas, and they were still shell-shocked and almost in a numb, glassy-eyed state, a month and a half later after that incident, of course. And some family trauma could be growing up with a feeling of lack, mom working 5 jobs and feeling, oh my God, are we going to make it? Or growing up in poverty, a parent being incarcerated is a big trauma. Moving a lot of times, our military families move every 4 years. This is our children being displaced constantly. That's traumatic on them. So there's many other family traumas. Those are just some common ones. And the last one, number 10, is mental illness in your parents. And the most damaging one to our children, number 1, would be borderline personality. This I best describe as fast trigger anger, and you never know who you're going to get, because when mom or dad is good and happy, they're really good. But when they're bad, they're horrid. And when you don't know what you're going to get, you're coming into school, did mom have a good day? Is she yelling? Is she going to scream at me? It keeps the kids in a very high anxious state. And the other one is bipolar, which is manic depressive. So manic is a very happy state. Depressed is sad, exhausted, angry, can be a form of depression, staying in bed. And then very often parents self-medicate from these, where the drugs or the alcohol come into play, and often addictions emerge from the self-medication. And I've been a SAC counselor, Jane, a student assistance counselor, where I worked in schools at every grade level from kindergarten all the way through college level in their counseling programs. And I was the one that handled the emotionally upset kids. And many of them were labeled ADHD or oppositional defiant. And actually these kids were coming from traumatic parental homes. So they weren't sleeping. They'd hear mom or dad fighting or night, or dad left and came home drunk. They'd fight, or they'd wake up. Mom was hungover, drunk. They'd have to get up, get their siblings ready for school, people pleasing, and, coming to school anxious. And when cortisol level is up, learning is down. They cannot memorize their facts. So I did a whole anti-bullying program, character ed program. We even had meditation in Miss Riana's relaxation room. And I'd send the kids back. They were like all zenned out. And the teachers were like, what are you doing in that room? But they were so anxious that they couldn't settle themselves to learn. So this is new research going into the trauma world. But I was seeing it back. I was in the schools from 2004 through 2008 and at college level earlier in my career in the student counseling center. So it's just amazing seeing, the correlations of what trauma does.
Totally. So that brings me to another question. And what are some of the ways that, what are some of the effects, the sabotaging effects and dysfunctional behaviors? You mentioned a couple, but what other things happen when students or young people and even adults experience traumas like the ones you've discussed? I mean, those are, it's such a comprehensive list, and thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Sure. Well, there's probably 20 as many of those as I could go into, but I'll give you a couple of examples that are very common. Let's talk about jealousy in a relationship. This comes from usually trauma number 7, when you were bullied and not feeling good enough, or growing up next to a golden child where you're always comparing yourself and not feeling like you could measure up. So jealousy is always perceived in the unconscious mind. A lot of times none of that is based in fact when your partner gets jealous and they lose it on you. And it's like, are you looking at that person? It's like, no, I'm watching the band. It's like constant accusations, we call false negative assumptions, going on because the unconscious is being triggered emotionally. So that's jealousy. Let's say you're a woman that's dating a guy that constantly lies. Well, lying, like all of these, were a coping mechanism or a survival mechanism, a tool when they were young. So let's say the little boy with the F on the test corrects it to an A and gets away from that severe beating he was expecting if the dad knew he got an F on his test. It's like, wow, lying works. And he learns he's got a 50% shot to get away with things when he messes up, so he's not going to be beat. So lying just becomes an everyday, easy habit. And these are the people that lie so easily about everything. And you're thinking, why are you lying about that? Like, that's not even a big deal, because it's so ingrained and it's so normal. It's from their normal childhood, and it's unconscious. Women, for example, that are people pleasers, as like I mentioned, the alcoholic mom and the little girl is overdoing, so she's not going to get yelled at or screamed at. As a survival tool, she overdoes and becomes a woman that overdoes for her husband, her children, everybody else, putting herself last. So then she's burnt out, too tired for sex. The husband gets upset. She's upset. Nobody loves or appreciates me, right? Nobody does for me like I do for them. And she's very resentful. And the anger is ruining their love relationship. So that is very common. So those are just a few of them. And of course, addiction always comes from childhood wounds. It's always it starts usually as self-medicating, and then it just spirals and gets out of control.
So you said you work with people who have these toxic, traumatic events in their childhood, and you help them heal. How do you help couples heal from their trauma and toxic behavioral patterns, Riana?
Okay, sure. I work with men, women, teens, all the way from 15 to 80 I've had in my office, straight, LGBT, singles, and couples. So the common element is they're recognizing that they have childhood trauma and it's wreaking havoc or sabotaging them in life or in love. And my coaching programs are 50% life coaching and 50% love coaching. So we have to do the life work first. So this is where I wear the 3 hats, the psychotherapist and the clinical trauma professional. working with the past, healing that, getting the unconscious conscious, and giving them that sense of healing. So when they're emotionally triggered, no longer are they acting from the impulse that's sabotaging them. It's like, okay, I'm feeling anxious. This is coming from what and why and where. And they recognize it. So even with my couples, I do a lot of individual work first. I have to work with them individually initially in their life portion, even though I still have sessions with them to make sure, the fires are burnt out, they're not fighting, they're not screaming, they have a new form of communication immediately off the bat. But then I have to go deeper with them individually. So as they start healing and understanding, now they come together and I instruct them about what each other's emotional childhood wounds are. So it's all out in the open. So when someone's feeling triggered, it's like, hun, I'm feeling jealous right now. I know this is coming from da-da-da-da, but can you just hug me and kiss me in this moment? And then the guy will oblige. Sure, baby. I've got you. I'm here with you. Don't worry about a thing. And boom, they just work through it that fast. So there's a lot of different techniques I use with my couples and with my singles. Singles, for example, they're the ones that keep getting in repetitive toxic love relationships. We define it as same person, different face.
Right. I was going to ask you that. How do you help somebody stop attracting the wrong person?
Yeah. Again, you can't change what you don't understand. So we look at what they're attracting and why. And the fast chemistry is usually the most dangerous part. So when I hear someone say, oh, I was so in love with him, the chemistry was amazing, I'm like, red flag. Because chemistry pulls you exactly into your unconscious past. That's why your body's all turned on. I know this pattern. I like this pattern. This is my normal. Well, a lot of people's normal was toxic. So these are relationships that first start out really romantic and passionate, and you get a lot of texts and phone calls, and it's fast lovemaking, and it's real passionate lovemaking. But then 4 to 9 months in, studies show, as soon as there's more commitment, like words about being exclusive or getting engaged, living together, or marriage, these relationships start getting toxic. So for my singles, I educate them in exactly what they need to know as they're going out to date. There's about 25 questions that I go into, and what answers they're receiving tells them, yes, emotionally healthy or not emotionally healthy. So they are trained to have an emotionally healthy, evolved, and conscious relationship. Evolved means being their highest and their best selves. So they're always watching that they're doing the right things, which is, your highest and best self. And it is based in some spirituality for sure.
Beautiful.
And the other piece is, are they the people they're dating? So we have a term in our group called one and done. It's like, Riana, that was a one and done. I said, well, what'd you find out? Well, when I asked this question, this is how they answered. Then I followed up with this question and they answered this. So they are armed with exactly knowing, which gives them tons of confidence when it comes to dating now. They're no longer afraid of it because they know exactly what to look for, exactly what to ask.
And right, that consciousness seems really huge for both parties.
It's huge. So, some of the things to look for in that evolved relationship is someone else conscious. They think before they do speak and act. Is this for the good of all? Is this for the good of my partner as well as me? Faith-based is important, or they've done some work, personal transformation work, or if they haven't, they're open to learning about it, and they want to know about what you've been coached with. And for the couples, like I said, it's a step-by-step in new communication and working through different techniques I have to help them understand and speak about and process the trauma and triggers when they come up. And over time, for both my singles and my couples, it gets less and less. And the skills that they're learning, the most fabulous thing is that they last forever. Once you learn this, you've got it. So the younger people I work with, I'm so thrilled to see them come in young. But I have worked with people in their 70s where their marriages are falling apart.
Yep.
So
that's beautiful. So you have so much to offer. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
That fantastic. That's like right what you shared with us is almost like a master's degree in how people can evolve their previous experiences, which we have no control over our childhood. We are children, you know, we come into the world expecting to be treated beautifully. And for many of us, these things didn't, they maybe were very, you know, very understandable. And we are adults now. We understand how hard it is to raise children, and how hard it is to be an adult, working 5 jobs like you did, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
you know, and we didn't think anything, you know, we just dealt with it. Like I said, when we were children.
Yeah, it's normal. It's part of life. I mean, we did our best, right? We did our best.
Absolutely.
We do our best every day.
And you can't change the past. You're right. So what we change is the mindset in the now.
Yes.
And how to process it and move forward successfully.
That's wonderful. So what did you have something that you wanted to offer our listeners?
Yes. I mean, if the childhood trauma piece resonates with you, please reach out to me. I offer a 1-hour life and love transformation strategy session. If you go to my website, rianamilne.com, RIANAMILNE.com, there's a pop-up window. Just fill it out. Tell me your story. Nobody else sees that. It comes directly to me. And then I will write you back and give you a strategy session on Skype. We get to meet each other, and I will dissect your past a little bit deeper. This is a $500 value. I have 7 openings in the next 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks. So first come, first serve. I would love to help you. And the other thing I have is free chapter downloads of my books, #1 bestseller, Love Beyond Your Dreams, Break Free of Toxic Relationships to Have the Love You Deserve. Get that. It's going to open your eyes. And its sister book, Live Beyond Your Dreams, which is about the mindset for success. And they are meant to go together. So there's free chapter downloads right on the homepage. And always you can keep up with new cutting edge information on my Facebook page, Coach Riana Milne. So sign on and keep up with all the great interviews that I'm bringing to my folks like Dr. Jane.
Fantastic. It was such a pleasure to be with you here and to have you share your beautiful wisdom with my audience. And thank you so much for allowing me to share with your audience.
Thank you, Jane. Again, I really appreciate you coming on. My people needed this information about sex and affairs. So like, you are the go-to person that I wanted on my platform for this. And for both our listeners, I want to remind you, time is short. You've got to act. It's time to have the life you desire and the love you deserve. Thank you for listening, and God bless.